It feels like the past 3 months of videos have led up to this very video because today we are finally talking about Mobile Suit Gundam GQuuuuuuX beginning. But before we dive into it, please do leave a like on this video and subscribe if you are a fan of mecha anime content and want to see plenty more videos like this in the future. Also head on down to the comments section below if you've had the chance to watch GQuuuuuuX beginning on the big screen, then let me know what you thought of it. Without further ado though, let us dive into GQuuuuuuX beginning and talk about what it does well, what it does wrong, all that kind of stuff. Starting out with technical kind of stuff here. On a technical level, this thing is absolutely flawless. The music especially, I think, was probably one of the standouts. It's very cyberpunky, but then it's almost got a lo-fi aesthetic in certain places. The score is composed by Yoshimasa Terui, who is one of the people behind the Jujutsu Kaisen soundtrack. That kind of style is very much applied to GQuuuuuuX, but it's also very unique in its own right. And especially for a Gundam series that usually goes for the more orchestral route, this felt like a bit of a breath of fresh air in some way. It feels very different and it does really evoke that sci-fi feeling. Of course, there are, epic compositions and things like that, and the typical kind of heroic music you'd sometimes expect, but there's a lot of stuff in here that is really, really unique and stands out. On that same topic of audio though, the sound design in this thing is fantastic. Now we'll dive a little bit more into some of the elements of the sound design, but particularly when it comes to the actual GQuuuuuuX stuff in here, the stuff with, our main three group of characters and this kind of era. It feels different for Gundam. It also, really captures that sci-fi vibe, and that's what I kind of love most about this, is that it really leans into science fiction, especially just in the feeling and vibe. Like I said, it's very cyberpunky, but with a bit of a lo-fi aesthetic to it, and I think that's going to work for a lot of people, but it also, like I said, it feels different and unique for Gundam. The animation, as you would expect from a top quality production from the likes of Sunrise and of course Studio Kara as well, is fantastic. And it does have a nice blend of 2D, more traditional animation, and it does incorporate 3D elements, CGI into it as well, but I think they are blended so well. You can definitely notice a difference between 2D mech and 3D mech in this series, but it's not so obvious. Like they're definitely managing to really blur that line between the two, and I think when you compare it to Kara's previous mecha work in the rebuild of Evangelion films, especially the third one anyway, that opts for a lot more CGI, and some of it looks really good, some of it not so much. Might be due to some of the things they actually make CGI, such as the giant Rei and Hami head, but also sometimes with the certain locations and settings that they use, the lighting doesn't work well with the CGI. But here, this is easily the best CGI work they've done to date. I would say it's leaps and bounds better than 3.0 plus 1.0, which, like I said, it has moments of good CGI in there, but this across the board, I really can't fault it. Like, in terms of the CGI, this thing looks fantastic, and they do a fantastic job at blending it in well, and that's sometimes the problem with CGI. It usually looks bad when you've got it against 2D backgrounds and 2D characters, and you notice a difference, and it feels a little bit uncanny. Here, you don't notice it. The CGI is really top-notch, and some of the best we probably got in Mecha. The art direction right from the first trailer has definitely been a topic of controversy because people don't like the character designs. They've compared it to Pokemon, which makes sense because it's the same character designer, but I personally like it. I think the art direction here is phenomenal. I think the characters feel like they have so much life and they feel so quirky, and there's such a diverse, bright colour scheme to pretty much every character that you have. I cannot fault the art direction. I think so far it's fantastic. Like I said, it's been a point of controversy because of those character designs, but right from the get-go, I was fine with them, and seeing them in action in the series, they look really good. On that same topic of design work, we've also got the mobile suits, which have definitely been a point of controversy, arguably more so than the character designs, because it's taken a lot of iconic stuff and Evangelionifying it, if you will. I always thought right off the bat, like, every single one of these designs they came out with, I loved. I really like the GQuuuuuuX design, I love the Red Gundam design, and then the gun cannon version that they've got in here. The looks really, really good. They feel like the original counterparts, but just with a unique spin on them, and I think it works really well. And it's not uncommon for Gundam to do this. We've seen Gundam Seed, for example, just take Zaku's and implement them into the series, but also switch them up a little bit where they've gone with like the Gin or Jin, whatever it's called, and that's like that version of a Zaku. We've seen it, throughout every single version of Gundam where they've taken designs from classic UC and made their own versions. I think because this is very much those original versions, but a very different version of them, it's almost struck a chord and struck a nerve, if you will, with some of the original fans, which is fine. If people don't like it, that's really down to opinion, but I think they look really good. And for fans of Universal Century, the original Gundam series in particular, there is a lot of fan service here. There's audio cues, visual cues, character references that will really put a smile on your face. You know, this feels like, or parts of it anyway, feel like a bit of a love letter to the original Gundam series. And for someone who, you know, only finished watching it very, very recently, like my previous video was a video talking about the original Gundam series, I got it all and I was like, yeah, this is really cool. I'm loving what they're doing here. And like I said, if you're a fan of the original Gundam series, you're going to eat all that stuff up. It might feel a little bit superficial in some ways, but I think it works very, very well. And it's going to hit that nostalgia bone. It's going to hit that fan service bone. But at the same time, you know, it does some unique things with it as well in terms of the story. And on that topic of story, this is probably the most intrigued and interested I have been in a Gundam series ever. You watch this, you know, compilation film, if you will, and there's so many questions about setup, story, lore, mysteries that are just going through your head, and you walk out of it with so many questions, but in a very satisfying way where you want to see what comes next. You want to see how it explores these things that are set up in a way that Witch from Mercury I don't think quite did. Don't get me wrong, I love Witch from Mercury, I love like a lot of things about it, but I don't think it quite has that unique and like exciting setup in the way where you want to know more, you want to see these mysteries play out, and you see kind of things happening on screen. You're like, what could this mean? What could that mean? And there's so many questions that you have after watching this. There's so much to digest in terms of lore, like I said, setup, mysteries, where they could go with certain characters, where they could go with certain story beats. I think this is going to be one of those series where you're in the Gundam fandom and you're watching this on a week-to-week basis. The conversation surrounding it could potentially be very, very exciting. A large part of that exciting setup is the whole like new type phenomena stuff that they seem to really be diving into. That seems to be a massive priority in terms of storytelling within this series, and that excites me a lot. The original Gundam series dives into new types a little bit. I've not seen Zeta, so I don't know how much that dives into it. I've not seen Double Zeta, all that kind of stuff, so I don't know how much the original like Gundam timeline and that era of Universal Century truly dives into new types, but the way that they've set this up, there's so much there. This really feels like a series that will be heavily focused on diving into a lot of weird shit and phenomena and new type psychological things, which feels very in line with Evangelion, so I guess it kind of makes sense coming from Kara and coming from a lot of the team behind that. So that to me is the most exciting part, where there's so much that could go down, there's so many things where they could go balls to the wall and batshit crazy, setting certain things up. They could definitely break a lot of stuff as well. They could do things that maybe piss fans off, which can sometimes be exciting if they can do it well. Considering this movie is only made up of about 3 episodes of the series, it's really difficult to judge how good the characters are, but so far, I like them. I'm not fully invested in them just yet, but it's the same for every Gundam series, you know. 3 episodes is really not enough to judge how much you engage with and like characters. If someone can stand out in like an episode, then sure, like sometimes that happens, but it's very rare, especially with like lead characters, for them to get a large amount of development within the first few episodes when they're going to be around for the whole series. And that is the case here. Don't get me wrong though, I love Amate as a protagonist. I think she's really fun. I kind of just love that street smart attitude that she's got. And yes, I think we're going to get a lot of laughs out of her, but also at the same time, she's pretty cool and she's willing to just dive headfirst into things. Also, you got Shuji here as well. I'm very intrigued by that character. I kind of like the derpiness to him in a way. I think that's a lot of fun. And then Nyan as well, who is very much the more normal character of the 3. I think there's some really interesting things you could do with that character, because there's a lot of backstory to explore there and her reasonings behind why she is at the point that she is in. So I think there's really interesting things to do there. But then when it comes to Charlie Bull, who is one of the major characters in this series, he's definitely my favorite part of this. I love his attitude. I love his approach to commanding people and the fact that he almost just seems like a regular guy. You know, he's not like this evil commanding officer. Like, he really looks out for his crew, and he just seems like one of those guys that you could really get along with, and I love those kind of characters. He's also got one of the greatest glow-ups in the history of anime as well. Like, you look at his original design, you look at his design in this, like, the glow-up is crazy. As much as I do have a lot of positive things to say about this series, there are some negatives or more so concerns that I have about it. And this first one is not really a negative from my perspective, but I think it could potentially be a negative in the long run and kind of maintaining the longevity of this series. And that is that it's definitely not for newcomers. Most alternate universe Gundam series are pretty, newcomer friendly. People will say they're not, but I think they are. You could watch Seed, you could watch Double O, you could watch G Gundam, and you don't have to watch the original Gundam series. Obviously, it is good to watch it because that's where all the stuff originates from. But at the same time, to understand the story and understand the characters, because it's a totally different story, you really don't need to watch the original Gundam series. I think when it comes to GQuuuuuuX though, it's almost required viewing. Not quite, I think you can get it without that, but it almost feels like to get the best experience out of it, you need to watch it, because there's so many things that happen that feel pretty important, where a lot of people just, it would fly over their heads. This is certainly not one of those series where you can recommend it as a gateway into the Gundam franchise, unlike Witch from Mercury that just came prior, Iron-Blooded Orphans, maybe even Requiem for Vengeance, which is very much a part of Universal Century. I think feels a little bit more like it could be a gateway into Gundam as opposed to this series, which is maybe not the greatest idea, and ultimately we'll see how it pays off in terms of bringing new fans. Because that's what all alternate universe Gundams do, they usually bring in a new fandom to the Gundam fandom, and it'll be interesting to see how well this goes down with people that are not already into Gundam. Again, from my perspective, it's not a negative because I've seen the original Gundam series, so I understood everything that was going on, but I'm thinking more outside of the hardcore Gundam fans, because that's kind of what you got to think about sometimes when it comes to these business decisions, especially when it comes to Bandai, to Sunrise. They want to be making money, they want to be bringing in new fans and such, and I don't know how well GQuuuuuuX is going to manage that. The only thing that's truly a negative for me is how fast-paced this thing is. Like, it borders on rushed, I gotta say. Like, the first part of it, extremely rushed, but if you've seen the original Gundam series, it's really not that bad, and you'll kind of latch on to things a lot better. But when it comes to introducing all these new characters and really doing the full setup for what GQuuuuuuX is going to be, I felt like it was too fast-paced in many ways. Like, the setup for Amate as a character, I felt like it really rushed through it and almost just threw you straight in there without much kind of build-up or context to anything, which of course could be expanded upon as the series progresses. Sometimes series do that, where they kind of just throw you straight in, and then they do the explanations later. So this might be one of those cases where they do that, but I'm looking at this as it is, like at face value. I felt like there was a lot of elements to the story, to the setup and pacing of the characters, where, like I said, it felt a little bit too fast-paced, borderline rushed. But overall, despite my grievances with GQuuuuuuX beginning, I thought this was a fantastic start to the series, and it's got me interested and intrigued to know how it's going to play out. There's so much in here to unpack and digest and theorize about, which is always very exciting when you don't have source material to go back on to say like, oh, this is where the story is going to go. We don't know, and that to me is exciting. It's not a fear of the unknown, it is an excitement about the unknown. On a technical level, like I said, this thing is flawless. The animation, particularly the CGI, are truly top-notch and probably the best that Kara and Sunrise have done to date. The art direction is fantastic, the music, the sound design, it is all really, really awesome. And I think if you're a fan of the original Gundam series, like I said earlier, this thing is really going to hit those nostalgia beats and those fan service moments as well. And all I have left to say is that April 8th cannot come quicker. So with all that in mind, I'm going to give Mobile Suit Gundam GQuuuuuuX Beginning an A. But those are my thoughts on GQuuuuuuX Beginning. Before I get out of here, please do leave a like on this video and subscribe if you are a fan of Mecha anime content and want to see plenty more videos like this in the future. Also, head on down to the comment section below. Like I said earlier, let me know your thoughts on this movie if you have seen it, and stay tuned because like I said, we've got plenty more GQuuuuuuX Beginning videos coming. Character tier list, mobile suit tier list, full spoiler breakdown, theories, all different shorts and all that kind of stuff. So if you're excited about GQuuuuuuX, this is the channel you want to be at. Thank you once again for tuning into Mecha Chat today. I'll see you guys next time.